Good morning. This is Chaplain Johnson from the Spiritual Care Department with our Monday morning meditation. We want to at least take a moment, sorry about that, take a moment to welcome you to our Monday morning meditation and to hopefully offer words of encouragement and inspiration. Every Monday morning, we attempt to try to deliver a message, some message that will be an encouragement to you. We recognize that the challenges of not only working or serving or caring for those in the hospital or for being a patient in the hospital or a family member of a patient in the hospital means that we are taxed on every hand. And so we want for each of you to know that you are cared for, you are loved, you are appreciated, and you are irreplaceable. Because in the eyes of our Creator, that God in so many ways wants you to know that you're not alone and that you are journeying along this way, not by yourself, but with support and with encouragement from those who are journeying with you. By God's hand and God's Spirit, God lifts us up and gives us the ability to do that for each other. And so this morning's Monday morning meditation follows the line. We've been working on a theme for the last several weeks. We've been talking about finding faith. And one of the beautiful things about finding faith is that faith is not necessarily always one of those things that is, quick. You just say the word and it happens. In fact, faith is not predicated on our ability to kind of call into things as if we can change the weather and just decide that today is not going to rain, but it will be sun, or we will now finally get the things we've always wanted. That is not always where faith can be found at its most powerful point. Faith is found in moments in which we are distressed and overwhelmed, and we can't see another way. And in proverbial terms, we have learned how, when we've gotten to the end of our rope, to tie a knot. And as I read in a book some years ago, what happens when you get to the end of your rope and you do tie a knot and then your rope breaks? What carries you then? Faith is the belief that the rope doesn't hold you, but somehow, even if the rope breaks, something will happen. The door will open, a way will be made, that God sees us and knows what we stand in need of beyond our abilities to maintain or make things happen. So today's Monday morning meditation comes to us from a really familiar place during this time of year. And I want to just pick up just a few verses of the book of Acts. And I apologize for those who may be receiving this message who are from other faith traditions. We promised to be able to kind of vary this up. But during this season, I thought this story, this conversation in faith would be helpful for us today and for this particular set of messages under the theme of finding faith. The book of Acts, the first chapter, and somewhere around the 9th or 10th verse kind of gives you these words. And I'm sharing these words from Eugene Peterson's Message translation, or what I should say, paraphrase. These were his words, his last words, Peterson writes. And they watched. As they watched, he was taken up and disappeared in a cloud. They stood there, staring into the empty sky. Suddenly, two men appeared in white robes. They said, "You Galileans, why do you just stand here looking up at an empty sky? This very Jesus who was taken up from among you to heaven will come as certainly and mysteriously as he left." I really like just focusing on these parts of scripture, and sometimes I might just go thematically or topically, but this is important for our discussion because the background for this story is that Jesus has been crucified and he has been resurrected and he has moved among his disciples, his followers, even in a resurrected body, but he doesn't stay with them forever. What he does is he shows them himself and appears to them so that they could see and know that he was alive and that he had been resurrected. However, what's important here is that we also see that God, through Jesus, was allowing them to see that even though he had suffered, that he could not and would not stay with them. And so our scripture here today outlines this story that after spending some time with them, he decides and he is called upon to leave them. He is ascended right before their eyes, and he moves away from them and disappears in the clouds in heaven. Now, whatever you think about the story, here is the beauty of the story, is that while many would say that in our world as we live, that we should be able to, by our faith, to escape the troubles and the trials of this world, Jesus leaves his disciples behind and assumes a role at the right hand of God to inform all those in heaven what life must really be like and really is like for those who are walking on the earth. Now, whatever your faith tradition and your theological belief is, here is the important point that I'm trying to make. That while we would wish to escape the troubles of this world, like Mahalia Jackson would say, sooner we'll be done with the troubles of the world, sometimes we can't go home right away to live with God. We are forced to, are called upon to live in this world. And how are we called to live? We are called to live waiting. Waiting is a part of faith. That as those disciples were staring up into the sky, they weren't sure what would happen. And so they just stood there as if they weren't sure what to do next. And waiting was their call to wait. The angels appeared to them and said, now, I don't know why you're standing here looking up into the heavens. The same Jesus that you have seen ascend and go up will someday come back. Now, the point is that we are not allowed the privilege of just gazing or wishing that we could leave too, or that we could also ascend. The early church had a group of heretics that thought that if they would do just as Jesus would, they would also ascend into the heavens and not have to live in this world full of trouble. But my beloved friends, those of you who are hearing me, I hope you can, that life does not afford us the privilege of escaping all of the troubles of this world, and this world is filled with troubles. So we are called to wait, but what does waiting mean? Does it mean idly twiddling our fingers? Does it mean we are waiting and hiding out in a place? Well, the disciples were called to stay in Jerusalem, but for a particular purpose that's going to come in a few days, and that is Pentecost, an empowering presence, the Spirit of God, empowering them to live a different kind of life, to do some different things, to change the world as they had known it. And we are on the precipice of a time when we are called upon to change the world as we know it. And sometimes that comes with heartache and headache, because it's difficult to be in a place where you're called upon to change the world. Perhaps you're a doctor and you're called upon to change the world one patient at a time, or a nurse one patient at a time, or even if you're a patient, to change the minds of doctors and nurses about the miracles that you believe God will have for you, or what it would take for a person to even know that they are going through a difficulty that they may not come out in the physical side, but to move through it in a way that points to faith in what it is that they believe. It's important to know that as we are here, we are sharing with one another, and we are encouraged to wait. This is a song, this hymn. I love this hymn, and it comes from One Lord, One Faith, One Baptism. It's a wonderful hymnal. I love this song. It's an old hymn, not an old hymn, actually, more recent hymn, not too old, 2006, in fact. And here are the words. I'm going to read a few verses of it from verses 2, 3, and 4. Sing a new world into being, where each gender, class, and race brings its rainbow gifts and colors to God's limitless embrace, where the lines that once divided form instead the ties that bind. Sing a new world into being, risk transforming heart and mind. Sing a new world into being, where the homeless find a home, where no children ever hunger, but are filled in God's shalom, where all people work for justice, where all hate and vengeance cease. Sing a new world into being, raise the harmonies of peace. Sing a new world into being, join the ancient prophets' cry, for a time of health and plenty, when all tears have been wiped dry. When compassion flows like waters, pouring balm for all who grieve, sing a new world into being, live the promise you believe. Those disciples were called upon to sing a new world into being, to be able to, in their living, show those around them in a world full of strife, chaos, difficulty, hardship, and pain, to discover in the middle of all of that what it looks like to sing, to live, to laugh, to love a new world into being. So I'm encouraging you today to do that. While waiting, don't just wait, but wait. I learned something some years ago that waiting is an active word. It does not mean passively waiting and sitting by, but waiting is like what you receive when you go to the restaurant. Someone who is actively engaging in serving while time passes. That's what it means to wait. Faith is about waiting and discovering that in the middle of our waiting, that there are some important things to note. When we believe that we are waiting for purpose, and when we believe that our waiting has meaning, we no longer find ourselves believing in an understanding that life is just going to work out the way we want. But faith does not solve our problems all the time. Faith does not sanitize our lives all the time. Faith does not bring us out of the depths of difficulty all the time. And that is exactly the glory of the ascension and of what faith really means. Faith may not change every circumstance, but it changes us in them. It may not keep you from having a difficult day, but it will change you and make you a different person while you're in the difficult day. It may not change the fact that you may be in the hospital or that you may be working your second double shift and weary and are tired, or that you may not have trouble at home or chaos in the city or what we see on the news. Faith doesn't automatically change those things. I hate to break the news to you. But what faith does is change us. It gives us the ability to know that as the ascension has taught us, that there is someone who knows what we're experiencing and sits in the highest place to be able to give instruction and direction to us on how to navigate these difficult waters. I don't know about you, but I feel good about that. And today, I want to encourage you not to give up. Let me tell you why. Some years ago, when my son William, I shouldn't have mentioned his name, but my name is William, so there you go. He was a little baby. I can't remember. It's just I picked him up from daycare. My wife was working in the Charlotte area, and I was in seminary and working as well. But I picked him up from daycare early and brought him home. Put him in his little walker, one of those things that had all the little baby toys on it, and there I just sat him down and I turned around to do something. And before I knew it, as quick as he could move those little feet in that little walker, he was over pulling on the curtain. And as he pulled on the curtain, we were not great in decorating, but we pulled these little, I don't know what you call it, a Vance, a Valance, or whatever it is. Ladies and gentlemen, those of you who know about those things, you may know better than I do. But he shook loose one of the hooks that was holding it up on the side. And before I knew it, I heard it hit the top of the walker. And there I turned around and rushed to him to try to retrieve it before he could put it in his mouth. And if you want to see the quickest, fastest people in the world, take a baby and see how quick they can take something and put it in their mouth. And sure enough, he had it in his mouth. I'm looking for it. And then when I finally didn't find it, I looked in his eyes, and his eyes were big. And he looked at me as to say, "Daddy, I'm in trouble." I went through, my heart jumped out of my chest. And there I was in a moment, saw my life flash before my eyes, because I could only imagine what his mother was going to think about my lack of care for him. So I picked him up and I started to try to figure out how to find this hook, and it was in his mouth, and I realized he wasn't breathing. Yeah, he wasn't breathing. And so I decided to try to retrieve the hook and put my finger in his mouth, and only found that the more I reached for it, the further the hook went down his throat. I was frightened, terrified, scared, whatever word you can imagine. And I thought I would lose my son. There I was, poking for it more, until I was grossed out by trying to push and pull that thing out, and I couldn't, and it went down his throat. And after a few seconds, he looked up at me and he started to cry. It was an indicator to me that he was indeed breathing. So I felt better, but I didn't feel great. And at that moment, I instantly tried to figure out what to do. And it seems as if my wife had some kind of ESP, whatever, and she called the house. Well, I'm embarrassed. I answered the phone and she asked, "How's everything going?" And I wanted to lie, but I couldn't. And I told her what happened. And she immediately told me, "Get him to the hospital." And she was going to leave work. And while I had to get him together, I got him together and got him to the hospital. He's playing in the back just fine, but he has a hook inside of his little baby body. And while we're on our way, I don't know how she beat me to the hospital, but she was there when I got there. And we got him in, and they took him immediately. And while we waited for the x-rays to see how he was doing, eventually, not long after, the doctors came out, and they told us that he was okay, that the hook had moved through his digestive system. Should come out by later that night or by morning. But the doctor still looked concerned. And so the doctor said to me and said to my wife, said, "Let us show you something." Here's what they showed us. An x-ray. They said, "We took the x-ray, and here's where the hook is, and this is where it's passing through. He should be okay. It's not doing any damage to him. He'll be fine with the hook." But while we were on the x-ray, we also looked at his lungs, and we discovered that he has walking pneumonia. And if you had not brought him in, this could have turned out really badly. Wow. Something that we did not understand, that we never would have known that he had walking pneumonia if it had not been for the unfortunate event of him swallowing a hook that his dad was supposed to not let him swallow. Why I mention that story? I mention it to say that we don't always know how things are going to turn out, even when they seem like they're bad. And so faith means not escaping those things that feel uncomfortable, but knowing that God sees all of it and knows the details of our lives long before we do. And God knows what it is that will bless us. So I'm encouraging you along the way, whether your faith belief is that or a Christian or not, just keep holding on to faith even in that waiting period. Believe that things will work out and start living in a way that you share what the joy and life and love is, that you will sing a new world into being, that you will pray a new world into being, that you will laugh a new world into being, and that you will love a new world into being. Be encouraged this week. I know this is a long message, and I'm sorry for how long it is, but I want to encourage you to keep on holding on. And thank you for enduring our 4-part series on finding faith. I hope and pray that you have a great week. And as I started, I'll end. Just remember that you are loved, you are appreciated, and you are irreplaceable. Thank you so much.